The apartment was cold when Taemin walked in. 6 months had passed since the war ended, but the silence still felt wrong. He dropped his bag on the floor and looked around the small space. Everything was exactly where he left it 3 weeks ago. The coffee cup sat unwashed in the sink. The bed was unmade. This was supposed to be home, but it felt like a waiting room. Taemin had been a soldier for 12 years. Captain of the Terran Coalition's 5th Assault Division. He knew how to lead men into battle, how to survive when everything went wrong, how to make impossible choices. But civilian life? That was a different kind of war, and he was losing. The message arrived at midnight. His datapad buzzed with an official seal he didn't recognize. When he opened it, his blood ran cold. The Vryn Imperial Court was summoning him. Not requesting, summoning. The Vryn were the reason the war started. Their empire controlled 12 star systems and considered humans little more than ambitious children playing with dangerous toys. The peace treaty was barely 6 months old, and the ink still felt wet. Why would they want him? 3 days later, Taemin stood on their homeworld for the first time. The imperial city stretched across the horizon like a forest of crystal towers. Everything was built on a scale that made humans feel small. The Vryn were taller than humans, with skin that shimmered in shades of blue and purple. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. 2 guards escorted him through hallways that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered in symbols he couldn't read. Other Vryn stopped to stare at him as he passed. Their expressions weren't friendly. The throne room was massive. The ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. At the far end, on a platform that required 30 steps to reach, sat the Emperor. Galactic looked nothing like Taemin expected. The ruler of the Vryn Empire was dying. His skin had faded to a pale lavender, and his movements were slow and careful. Captain Taemin of Earth, the Emperor's voice echoed in the chamber. He spoke through a translator device, but even filtered through technology, his voice carried weight. Do you remember the Battle of Krena Station? Taemin's jaw tightened. He remembered. 3 years ago, during the worst days of the war, the station was falling apart around them. Civilians trapped in the lower levels. Vryn and human soldiers killing each other in the corridors. He and his squad were trying to reach an evacuation point when they found a wounded Vryn officer surrounded by rebels. The rebels were Vryn too, extremists who wanted to keep fighting even after their own command called for retreat. They would have executed the officer. Taemin's squad drove them off and got the wounded Vryn to safety. They never learned his name. The chaos of war swallowed everything. I remember, Taemin said carefully. That officer was me. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. I was inspecting the station when the attack came. Your translator implant was damaged. You never heard me identify myself. You saved my life simply because it was the right thing to do. Taemin felt the weight of every eye in the throne room on him. The Vryn nobles lining the walls looked shocked. Some looked angry. Among my people, Galactic continued, there is an ancient law. A blood debt must be repaid before death, or the soul carries it into the void. I am dying, Captain. The physicians give me days, perhaps hours. I have one possession that I value above all others. It is yours now. Your Majesty, I don't want. It is not about want. The Emperor's tone left no room for argument. It is about honor. Guards, bring ash. The name meant nothing to Taemin. He waited confused as a heavy door opened at the side of the throne room. He heard the sound first, claws clicking on stone, then growling low and threatening. The Vryn nobles stepped back and several reached for weapons. The creature that entered was massive. At first glance it looked like a wolf, but no wolf on Earth had ever grown that large. It stood almost 5 feet tall at the shoulder. Its fur was pure black, so dark it seemed to absorb light, but the eyes were what made Taemin's breath catch. Silver. Bright metallic silver, and they were looking right at him with an intelligence that no animal should have. This is Ash, the Emperor said. He has been with me for 60 years. The nobles call him the Eater of Souls. He has killed more of my enemies than I can count. He is feared throughout the Empire. Galactic paused, and something that might have been sadness crossed his face. He is also the most loyal companion I have ever known. And now he is yours. The wolf creature walked forward slowly. Every Vryn in the room tensed. Ash stopped 3 feet from Taemin and sat, those strange silver eyes never looking away. I can't take, Taemin started. You will. The Emperor's voice was final. Or you dishonor me in death. The choice is yours, human. Taman looked at Ash. The creature tilted its head slightly, and Taman could have sworn he saw curiosity in those eyes. Or maybe judgment, I accept, he said quietly. The nobles erupted in whispers. The Emperor nodded once, satisfied. Then it is done. Take him and go. The transport ship is waiting. I doubt we will meet again, Captain. Thank you for my life, even if you didn't know it was mine. 2 hours later, Taemin was on a Vryn transport ship heading back to human space. They gave him a small cabin and made it clear they wanted nothing to do with either him or the wolf. Ash was loaded into the cargo bay initially, but when Taemin insisted the creature stay with him, the crew didn't argue. They just wanted both of them gone. Now Taemin sat alone in his cabin with a giant wolf that everyone said was a monster. Ash lay in the corner, watching him with those unsettling silver eyes. The creature hadn't made a sound since they left the throne room. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with you, Taemin said, more to himself than the wolf. I can barely take care of myself. The ship hummed around them. Stars streaked past the small window. Taemin felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Another burden he didn't ask for. Another life depending on him. He thought about the war, about the friends he lost, about coming home to an empty apartment and realizing he didn't know how to be anything except a soldier. Maybe that's why he accepted. At least this was something he could understand. A mission, a responsibility. You don't belong among them either, do you, soldier? Taemin froze. The voice was deep and resonant, speaking perfect Korean. He turned slowly toward the wolf. Ash was still lying in the corner, but his head was raised now. Those silver eyes gleamed with unmistakable intelligence. Did you just... Taemin couldn't finish the sentence. His mind refused to accept what he just heard. Speak? Ash's mouth didn't move the way a human's would, but the words were clear. Yes, I imagine this is quite a shock. Taemin stood up, his heart pounding. Every instinct told him this was impossible. Animals didn't talk. They didn't speak Korean or any other language. They didn't have conversations. What are you? He whispered. Ash stood, and even though he didn't move aggressively, Taemin felt the power in that massive frame. Someone who has been silent for a very long time. Someone who chose to let them see a monster because it was easier than the truth. The wolf moved closer, and someone who finally has a reason to speak. We have much to discuss, Captain Taemin, starting with the fact that the Emperor didn't die of natural causes and your entire species is in danger. The cabin suddenly felt very small. Taemin stared at the creature who was somehow more than a creature, and realized his quiet life after the war was over before it began. Everything was about to change. For a long moment, Taemin just stared. His military training told him to stay calm, assess the situation, identify threats. But how do you assess a talking wolf? You're going to need to sit down, Ash said, his tone almost gentle. This is a lot to process, Taemin sat. Not because the wolf told him to, but because his legs suddenly felt weak. How long have you been able to talk? Always. Ash settled onto his haunches, looking less like a predator and more like someone preparing to tell a long story. My people, the Valar, have been speaking for longer than your species has existed. We built ships and traveled the stars 10,000 years before humans discovered fire. That's impossible. Is it more impossible than me speaking to you right now? Ash tilted his head. I understand your doubt. Let me explain. The wolf told him about the Valar, a civilization that once thrived across multiple systems. They had abilities the Vryn and humans didn't. Psionic powers, telepathy. They could sense emotions and sometimes even thoughts. Other species feared them, called them dangerous, unnatural. They formed a coalition, Ash continued, his voice heavy with old pain. 7 different species, all agreeing that the Valar were too powerful to be allowed to exist. They called it a preemptive defense. We called it genocide. How many survived? A few thousand scattered across the galaxy. We learned to hide, to let other species see us as animals, pets, beasts of burden. It was safer than the alternative. Ash's silver eyes fixed on Taemin. I've been pretending for over 2,000 years. Do you understand how exhausting that is? Taemin tried to imagine it. Centuries of silence, watching civilizations rise and fall, never speaking, never being seen as what you truly were. Why tell me? Why speak now? Because the Emperor is dead and you need to know the truth. Ash stood and moved to the window, looking out at the stars. Kalveth didn't die from illness. He was poisoned, slowly, carefully, over months. by people in his own court. The words hit Taman like a physical blow. Who? A faction called the Ascendancy. They believe the Vryn are superior to all other species. They hated the peace treaty with humanity. They think you're too dangerous, growing too fast, learning too much. Ash turned back to face him. They're planning to break the treaty. Not openly. They'll manufacture an incident, make it look like humanity attacked first. Then they'll have an excuse to wipe you out. Taman's mind raced. Why didn't the Emperor stop them? He tried. He was one of the few Vryn who believed in true peace. That's why they killed him. Ash's voice grew quieter. And that's why he gave me to you. He knew I was sentient. I told him the truth years ago, and he kept my secret. He left me with you because he knew what was coming. He wanted someone who could warn humanity. Someone they might actually believe. A talking wolf? Nobody's going to believe that. That's why we need proof. The ship's intercom crackled to life. They would arrive at Haven 7 Station in 3 hours. Taman spent those hours listening to everything Ash knew about the Ascendancy. Names, positions, suspected conspirators. The wolf had been in the Imperial Palace for 60 years. He'd seen and heard things the conspirators never imagined a beast could understand. When they docked at Haven 7, Taman had one person he knew he could trust. Jiwoo worked in intelligence now, but during the war she'd been part of his unit. She saved his life twice. He'd saved hers once. That kind of bond didn't break. Her office was in the civilian sector of the station. Small, cluttered with data tablets and half-empty coffee cups. Jiwoo looked up when Taemin walked in, and her face split into a genuine smile. Taemin, I heard you were off-world. What brings you? She stopped when she saw Ash. What is that? It's complicated. Taemin closed the door behind them. I need you to listen to something impossible. Jiwoo was good at her job because she knew how to stay calm. She listened as Taemin explained everything. The Emperor's death. The blood debt. Ash's true nature. The conspiracy. Let me get this straight, she said slowly. You're telling me that your wolf can talk and there's a secret Vryn faction planning to start the war again? Yes. Can I hear it? The wolf, I mean. Ash had been silent since they entered the office. Now he spoke. Hello, Jiwoo. I understand this is difficult to believe. Jiwoo's eyes went wide. Her hand moved instinctively toward the pistol on her desk, then stopped. That's really happening. You're really talking. I am. And everything Taemin told you is true. Your intelligence agencies must have noticed unusual activity in Vryn space. Jiwoo's professional instincts took over. She pulled up files on her main screen. We've detected some strange movements. Military ships gathering in systems that don't make strategic sense. Communications blackouts, but nothing concrete. Nothing that proves hostile intent? That's because they're being careful, Ash said. They learned from the last war. This time they want it to look justified. I need proof, Jiwoo said. Real evidence. Not just testimony from she gestured at Ash. From whatever you are. No offense, none taken. I expected skepticism. That's when the window exploded. Glass and metal shattered inward. Taemin reacted on instinct, tackling Jiwoo to the ground. 3 figures shimmered into view. Vryn wearing advanced armor with cloaking technology. Assassins. Ash moved like lightning. The first assassin didn't even have time to aim his weapon. The wolf's jaws closed on his arm and the Vryn screamed. Ash twisted, using the assassin's body as a shield against the other 2. Taemin was already moving. His combat training flooded back instantly. He grabbed Jiwoo's pistol from her desk and fired twice. One shot missed. The other caught an assassin in the shoulder. The service corridor, Jiwoo shouted, pointing to a side door. It leads to the maintenance shafts. Ash released the first assassin and charged the third. The Vryn tried to fire, but the wolf was too fast, too smart. He feinted left, then attacked from the right, his claws raking across the assassin's chest armor hard enough to leave deep gouges. Go. Ash's voice was a growl now. I'll hold them. No. Taemin grabbed his arm. Or where his arm would be if he were human. His shoulder. We go together, they ran. The corridor was narrow, forcing them to move single file. Jiwoo led, her knowledge of the station's layout guiding them through passages most people didn't know existed. Behind them they could hear more attackers. The Ascendancy hadn't sent just 3 assassins. How did they find us so fast? Jiwoo panted as they ran. They've been watching, Ash said. Probably tracking Taemin since he left the Vryn homeworld. They know I'm with him, but they don't know I can speak. They think killing us will be simple. They emerged into a cargo bay. Ships of all sizes sat docked, waiting for clearance or repairs. Taemin's mind worked fast. They needed transport. Somewhere the assassins couldn't follow. There. Jiwoo pointed to a small courier ship. That's a Terran intelligence vessel. I have access codes. They sprinted across the bay. Energy weapons fired behind them, striking cargo containers and sending sparks flying. Ash turned and snarled, a sound so deep and threatening that even the Vryn assassins hesitated for a moment. That moment was enough. They reached the ship, Jiwoo's codes opened the hatch, and they scrambled inside. The engines were already warm. Protocol for intelligence ships, always ready to run. Jiwoo took the pilot's seat, her fingers flying across the controls. The ship lifted off just as more assassins poured into the bay. Weapons fire pinged off their shields. Where do we go? Taemin asked, checking the ship's weapon systems. Caro Station, Ash said immediately. It's in the frontier territories. Lawless mostly. There's a Vryn defector hiding there. Rintal. He worked in the Imperial Science Division before he fled. He knows about the Ascendancy's weapon. Weapon? Jiwoo's voice was tight as she maneuvered through the station's exit corridor. They're building something called the Silence, a biological agent that targets human neural chemistry specifically. They're planning to deploy it at the next diplomatic summit. Every human ambassador will die, and they'll claim humanity attacked first with some kind of poison. The ship broke free of Haven 7 and jumped to faster-than-light travel. In the sudden quiet, the three of them looked at each other. So we're fugitives now, Taemin said. Appears so, Jiwoo replied. Ash made a sound that might have been a laugh. Welcome to my world. Being hunted gets easier with practice. That's not reassuring, Taemin said. It wasn't meant to be, but you're both still alive, and that's what matters. The wolf settled onto the deck. Get some rest. Caro Station is 2 days away and we'll need to be sharp. The frontier doesn't forgive mistakes, Taemin looked at Jiwoo. She looked at him. Neither of them spoke, but they didn't need to. They'd just been thrown into a conspiracy that could restart an interstellar war. Their lives would never be simple again, but at least they weren't facing it alone. Caro Station looked like it had been built from spare parts and bad decisions. The station hung in space near the frontier, a massive structure of mismatched modules and flickering lights. Ships of every size and design came and went, most of them carrying cargo that probably wasn't legal. This place is a nightmare for security, Jiwoo muttered as she guided their ship toward a docking port. No real government, no oversight. Just criminals, smugglers, and people who don't want to be found. Which makes it perfect for hiding a defector, Ash observed from the back of the cockpit. They'd spent 2 days traveling, and in that time Taemin had learned more about the Valar than he ever imagined. Ash told them about his people's philosophy. The Valar believed that true civilization wasn't measured by weapons or territory. It was measured by the ability to live alongside those who were different from you, to coexist without trying to dominate. That's what got us killed, Ash had said quietly. We were too idealistic. We thought other species would share our values. Instead, they saw our abilities as a threat. They destroyed us before we could realize they were afraid. Now, walking through Caro Station's main concourse, Taemin understood why places like this existed. The station was packed with dozens of different species. Vryn, humans, and aliens he didn't recognize. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. They argued, traded, and ignored each other in equal measure. Ash drew attention. A massive black wolf walking calmly through a crowded station wasn't common. But on Caros, people minded their own business. Staring could get you killed. Rintal is hiding in the lower sections, Jiwoo said, checking her datapad. I managed to get a message to him through intelligence channels. He's agreed to meet, but he's scared. He should be, Ash replied. The Ascendancy doesn't forgive traitors. They descended through the station, taking elevators and stairs into areas that felt more dangerous with each level. The lights got dimmer. The crowds got rougher. Taemin kept his hand near the pistol hidden under his jacket. The meeting place was a bar that looked like it had survived several fires and possibly a small war. The bartender was a 4-armed alien who didn't look up when they entered. Most of the patrons were too drunk or too focused on their own problems to care about the new arrivals. Rintal sat alone in a corner booth. The Vryn looked terrible. His skin, normally a healthy blue-purple, was pale and sickly. His hand shook as he held a drink. When he saw them approach, fear flashed in his eyes. You brought the human, he said in accented English, and the beast. The beast has a name. Ash said calmly. Rintal jumped, nearly spilling his drink. It speaks? By the void it speaks. My name is Ash, and yes, I speak. Now tell us about the silence. The defector looked around nervously, then leaned forward. I worked on it. Not willingly, you understand. They gave me no choice. The Ascendancy controls parts of the science division. They threaten my family. What does the weapon do? Taman asked. It's a virus, genetically engineered to target human neural pathways specifically. Once released, it spreads through the air. Infects everyone in a confined space within hours. Rintal's voice dropped to a whisper. Death comes in 3 days. The victim loses motor control first, then cognition, then respiratory failure. It looks like a natural disease outbreak. Jiwoo's face had gone pale. How much have they made? Enough for the summit. They're planning to release it in the ventilation system of the conference station. Every human diplomat will die. Hundreds of your people. Rintal pulled out a data chip. I have the formulas. The delivery system designs everything. But the files are encrypted with quantum-level security. You need a special key to access them. Where's the key? Taman demanded. In the Imperial Archive on the Vryn homeworld. It's the only place secure enough to store something that dangerous. Ash made a low growling sound. Of course it is. Before anyone could respond, the bar's main door exploded. Mercenaries poured in, weapons raised. They weren't wearing uniforms, but Taman recognized military training in the way they moved. Contact, he shouted, flipping the table to create cover. The mercenaries opened fire. Energy bolts lit up the dim bar. Other patrons screamed and scattered. The bartender ducked behind his counter like he'd done this before. Ash moved with deadly grace, circling around the attackers. Jiwoo had her pistol out, firing with careful precision. Taman grabbed Rintal and pulled him toward a back exit. One mercenary tried to block their path. Ash's jaws closed around his leg, and the mercenary went down screaming. The wolf didn't kill him, just disabled him, then moved to the next threat. This way, Rintal gasped, pointing to a maintenance hatch. They ran through narrow corridors that smelled like oil and old metal. Behind them, the mercenaries pursued. Taman could hear their boots pounding on the deck plates. How did they find us? Jiwoo panted. They've been tracking me, Rintal said miserably. I thought I was careful, but they must have planted something on me. A tracker, maybe biological. They emerged into a storage bay filled with cargo containers. Taman's military mind immediately assessed the terrain. Good sight lines, multiple levels. Plenty of cover. We make a stand here, he decided. There are too many, Rintal protested. We don't have a choice. The mercenaries entered from 3 different directions. Taman counted at least 10. Bad odds, but he'd faced worse during the war. Ash, can you sense them? Their emotions? Yes, fear, greed, determination. They're professionals, but they're not fanatics. Good, we can work with that. The firefight was brutal but brief. Taman used his combat experience to direct their defense. Jiwoo's shots were precise, taking out weapons and wounding rather than killing. Ash became a terror in the shadows, appearing from nowhere to drag mercenaries away from their firing positions. But there were too many. A lucky shot hit Rintal in the chest. The Vryn went down hard, gasping, "No!" Taman dropped to his side. The defector's hands fumbled with his jacket, pulling out the data chip. He pressed it into Taman's hand. Take it, stop them. My family. Tell them I'm sorry. Stay with us, Taman urged, but Rintal's eyes were already glazing over. The wound was fatal. Within seconds he was gone. Rage flooded through Taman. These people had killed an innocent scientist. Someone who just wanted to do the right thing. He stood, his pistol raised, and his next shots weren't meant to wound. The remaining mercenaries realized they'd made a mistake. They were facing a trained soldier who had nothing left to lose. Ash sensed the change in Taman's emotions and matched it, his attacks becoming more aggressive. The mercenaries broke. The ones who could still walk retreated, dragging their wounded with them. In the silence that followed, Taman looked down at the data chip in his hand. Then at Rintal's body, then at his companions. We need to go to the Vryn homeworld, he said quietly. That's suicide, Jiwoo protested. It's the heart of their empire. They'll be looking for us. I know. Taman met her eyes. But it's the only way to decrypt this data. And without the data, we can't stop the silence. Millions of humans will die. Ash walked over to stand beside him. Taman is right. We have no choice. You don't have to come, Taman said to Jiwoo. This isn't your fight. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Not my fight. They tried to kill me. They're planning to murder our entire diplomatic corps. This is everybody's fight now. She holstered her pistol. Besides, you'll need someone who knows intelligence protocols. And someone who can fly. Ash made that sound that was almost a laugh. Then it settled. We're going back to the place that wants me dead and you imprisoned. Do you know how to access the archive? Taemin asked. I spent 60 years in the Imperial Palace. I know passages and secrets that most Vryn have forgotten. The wolf's silver eyes gleamed. But there's something you need to understand. If we do this, I'll have to reveal myself. Not just to a few people, but to the entire Vryn Empire. My species has survived by hiding, by letting others think we're animals. If I do this, that protection ends. You don't have to, Taemin said firmly. We'll find another way. There is no other way. The archive is protected by systems that require psionic authentication. Only I can get us in. Ash looked at both of them. The Emperor gave me to you for a reason. He knew this moment would come. He knew I'd have to choose between safety and doing what's right. What if your people hate you for it? Jiwoo asked quietly. Then they hate me. But at least I'll have tried to save lives instead of hiding to protect my own. The wolf turned toward the exit. Come on. We have a long journey ahead and not much time. The summit is in 3 months. If we're going to do this, we need to move now. They returned to their ship, leaving Rintal's body for the station authorities. Taemin clutched the data chip like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. In a way, it was. It represented the proof they needed. The key to stopping a second war. As their ship lifted off from Cairo Station, Taemin looked at his companions. A talking wolf who was about to sacrifice his people's greatest secret. A brilliant analyst who'd given up her career to help. And himself, a soldier who thought he was done fighting. Here we go, Jiwoo said as she engaged the faster-than-light drive. The stars stretched into lines, and they headed toward the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Getting to the Vryn homeworld was easier than Taemin expected. Jiwoo used her intelligence contacts to embed them in a merchant convoy. Officially, they were transporting exotic animals for a memorial service honoring the late emperor. The story was thin, but it only needed to hold up long enough to get them planetside. Taemin posed as an animal handler. It wasn't much of a stretch. He kept Ash in a transport cage during inspections, and the wolf played his part perfectly. Silent. Still. Just an animal. The Vryn inspectors looked at him with disgust and fear, but they didn't look too closely. The Eater of Souls returns, one inspector muttered, making a warding gesture with his hand. They were cleared and allowed to land in the Imperial City. The moment their ship touched down, Taemin felt the weight of what they were attempting. This was the capital of an empire that spanned 12 star systems. Billions of Vryn lived here, and somewhere in this massive city was the evidence they needed to prevent a war. The Imperial City was even more impressive from the ground. Crystal towers reached into the clouds. Vehicles flew between buildings in organized streams. Everything was clean, ordered, and beautiful in an alien way. But there was tension in the air. Taemin noticed it immediately. Military patrols were more common than they should be. Vryn citizens watched them pass with hostile eyes. The Emperor's death had left a wound in the society, and it was still bleeding. They moved through the city carefully. Jiwoo had mapped out a route that avoided the most heavily monitored areas. Ash walked beside Taemin without restraint now. Citizens gave them a wide berth. Some threw garbage. Others spat and cursed in their own language. Let them see what they wish to see, Ash said quietly. We all wear masks to survive. Taemin felt protective rage building in his chest. These people had no idea what Ash truly was. They saw a monster because it was easier than seeing a person. The Imperial Palace was their destination. It sat at the city's heart, a structure so massive it could be seen from space. Getting inside would be the hard part. The palace had security systems designed by the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. There's a service entrance on the eastern wall, Ash explained as they huddled in a rented room near the palace district. It's used for deliveries and maintenance. The guards there are less vigilant because it's considered beneath notice. How do you know it's still there? Jiwoo asked. Because the Vryn don't change their routines easily. Tradition is everything to them. They waited until nightfall. The city never truly slept, but it grew quieter after dark. They approached the service entrance dressed in stolen maintenance uniforms. Jiwoo had hacked identification cards for all of them. The guards at the entrance looked bored. They barely glanced at the ID cards. One of them wrinkled his nose at Ash but waved them through. Inside the palace, Ash took the lead. He moved through corridors like he'd walked them yesterday, not months ago. The wolf knew every turn, every hidden passage, every blind spot in the security system. I spent 60 years here, he explained in a whisper. I learned every secret this place holds. The Vryn never considered that the beast watching them could remember everything. They descended into older sections of the palace. The architecture changed, becoming less ornate and more functional. These were the levels that predated the current structure. Ancient stone and metal instead of crystal and light. The archive entrance was guarded by 2 elite soldiers. They wore armor that shimmered with energy shields. Their weapons could punch through starship hulls. How do we get past them? Taman whispered. We don't. Ash stepped forward. I do. Before anyone could stop him, the wolf walked into the open. The guards immediately raised their weapons. Stop, one of them commanded. That's the Emperor's beast. What's it doing here? Ash sat calmly in front of them. Hello, Kelvar. Hello, Teshna. I know you both. You've guarded this entrance for 7 years. Kelvar, you have a daughter who just started at the military academy. Teshna, your mate recently gave birth to your 2nd child. Both guards froze, their weapons lowered slightly in shock. Did that thing just speak? Kelvar whispered. My name is Ash. I am Valar. I have been sentient for over 2,000 years, and I have walked these halls for 60 of them. I need to access the archive. The Empire is in danger. The guards looked at each other. Confusion and fear warred on their faces. Their entire understanding of reality was crumbling. Ash continued speaking, his voice calm but firm. The Emperor was murdered by the Ascendancy. They plan to break the peace treaty and commit genocide against humanity. I need to access encrypted data to prove it. You can kill me, or you can let me save your empire from traitors. This is impossible, Teshna said, but her weapon was lowering. Many impossible things are true, Ash replied. You serve the Emperor loyally. Serve his memory now. Let us pass. The guard stood frozen for a moment longer. Then Kelvar holstered his weapon. If this is a trick, we're all dead. If it's not a trick and you stop us, everyone is dead, Ash said. They let them through. The archive was vast. Rows of data storage systems stretched into the darkness. Information from thousands of years was stored here. The history of the Vryn Empire written in light and crystal. The decryption key is in the Imperial Vault, Ash said, deep inside. Only the highest security protocols can access it. They moved through the archive, Jiwoo's technical skills and Ash's knowledge combining to bypass security systems. But as they reached the vault entrance, alarms suddenly blared. They know we're here, Jiwoo said, her face illuminated by emergency lights. The vault door opened ahead of them, but instead of an empty chamber, they found someone waiting. A Vryn in military uniform, his armor decorated with the symbols of high rank. His skin was darker than most Vryn, almost purple-black. His eyes were cold. Commander Velkoth, Ash said quietly. The beast. Velkoth smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Or should I say the Valar? Yes, I know what you are. I've always known. You killed the Emperor, Tamin said, his hand moving toward his weapon. I saved the Empire from weakness. Kalaveth believed in peace, in coexistence. He was a fool. Velkoth gestured, and soldiers appeared from hidden positions around the vault. At least 20 of them, all armed. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this? I let you get this far. I wanted to see if the legendary beast would finally reveal himself. Why? Ash asked, to prove a point. You Valar hid for millennia. You let yourselves be treated as animals because you were afraid. And humans? They're no better, weak, emotional, inferior. Velkoth's voice rose with passion. The Vryn are destined to rule the galaxy. Your pathetic alliance changes nothing. It changes everything, a new voice said. The chamber's communication system activated. Screens lit up all around them. And from those screens, Ash's voice echoed not just in the vault, but across the entire planet. The entire empire. Jiwoo had activated a hidden program. Every word spoken in the vault was being broadcast through the Imperial Communication Network. Every Vryn citizen could hear. Ash stepped forward, addressing not just Velkoth but the billions listening. My name is Ash, I am Valar. My people were nearly destroyed because other species feared us. We've hidden for 10,000 years pretending to be animals because it was safer than the truth. Velkoth's face twisted with rage. Turn that off. But his soldiers were frozen. staring at their communication devices as the broadcast continued. The Emperor Kalveth knew what I was. Ash continued. He was the first Vryn in centuries who treated me with respect, who saw me as a person, and when conspirators poisoned him, he used his last act to try to save both our species. Ash transmitted the data from Rintal's chip. Files appeared on screens across the Empire. The weapon designs, the conspiracy, names of Ascendancy members in positions of power. Commander Velkoth and his allies murdered your Emperor. They plan to commit genocide and drag you into a war based on lies. I ask you now, is this the Empire you want? One built on fear and hatred? Or will you honor Kalveth's vision of peace? The vault fell silent. Then communication channels across the Empire erupted. Vryn citizens demanding answers. Loyalist military units moving against suspected Ascendancy conspirators. The Empire was tearing itself apart, but in the chaos was the possibility of something better. Velkoth drew his weapon. You've destroyed everything. He fired, but Taemin was faster. He threw himself in front of Ash, and the energy bolt took him in the chest. The world exploded in pain. He felt himself falling. Ash's roar shook the vault. The wolf moved with fury, attacking Velkoth with all the power of his ancient species. The commander's shields held for a moment, then shattered. Velkoth went down, screaming. Jiwoo was at Taemin's side, her hands pressing against his wound. Stay with me. Don't you dare die. Through fading vision, Taemin saw Ash standing over Velkoth. The wolf could kill him, should kill him, but instead he stepped back. Let justice decide your fate, Ash said. I'm not a monster, no matter what you believed. Loyalist soldiers burst into the vault. A Vryn female in command insignia looked at the scene in shock. Then she knelt before Ash. Honored Valar, we serve the Emperor's memory. We will take these traitors into custody. The last thing Taemin heard before darkness took him was Ash's voice. Get him to medical. Now then nothing. Taemin woke to white light and the smell of antiseptic. His chest ached, but it was a dull pain, manageable. He was alive. That was more than he expected. Welcome back, soldier. He turned his head carefully. Jiwoo sat in a chair beside his bed, looking exhausted but relieved. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept much. How long? His voice came out rough. 4 days. You were in surgery for 8 hours. The Vryn doctors said you should be dead. That energy weapon should have cooked your internal organs. She smiled slightly. Apparently you're too stubborn to die properly. Where's Ash? Making history. Jiwoo pulled up a screen showing news feeds. Watch. The broadcast showed chaos across the Vryn Empire. Velkoth and hundreds of Ascendancy conspirators were being arrested. Their weapon facilities were being destroyed. The evidence Ash provided had sparked a civil reckoning, but more importantly, it showed Valar. Dozens at first, then hundreds, then thousands. They were emerging from hiding across the galaxy. Species that had employed them as animals were learning the truth. The shock was universal. Ash is being hailed as a hero, Jiwoo said. The new Vryn Empress wants to meet with him, and the Galactic Council has called an emergency session. Everyone wants to talk to the species that's been hiding for 10,000 years. The new Empress, Tal Serra, Kalveth's granddaughter. She was off-world during the conspiracy. She's young, but she's already making changes. The first thing she did was formally apologize for how the Vryn treated Ash. The door opened and Ash walked in. The wolf looked the same as always, but something had changed in his bearing. He carried himself with a confidence that didn't need to hide. You saved my life, Ash said, settling beside the bed. Again, you seem to make a habit of that. Someone had to. Taemin tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. Did it work? Did we stop the silence? The weapon facilities have been destroyed. The conspirators are in custody. The summit will proceed as planned, and humanity is safe. Ash's silver eyes gleamed. You did it, Taemin. You and Jiwoo. You prevented a second war. Over the next few weeks, as Taemin recovered, he watched the galaxy change. The Valar revelation reshaped interstellar politics. Old assumptions crumbled. Questions about rights, sentience, and what defined a person dominated every news channel. Some species reacted with guilt, others with fear, a few with anger at being deceived. But slowly, dialogue began. The Terran coalition wanted Ash. Multiple government agencies approached Taemin, suggesting that such a powerful being should be protected or studied. The meaning was clear: they wanted to control him. Taemin refused every request. When a particularly pushy official threatened to have Ash detained, Taemin made his position clear. Try it, and I'll go public with every detail of how you tried to imprison the being who saved our entire species. See how that plays in the media." The official backed down. The Galactic Council session was historic. Representatives from every major civilization gathered. And for the first time, a Valar stood before them as an equal. Ash addressed the council in a speech that was broadcast across civilized space. Taemin and Jiwoo watched from the gallery. "My people were destroyed because we were different," Ash said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "Because we had abilities that others feared. We've spent 10 millennia hiding, watching younger species repeat the same patterns of fear and hatred that killed us." He paused, looking at each delegation in turn. "But we've also watched you grow, learn, change. Humanity fought a war with the Vryn, but they also made peace. They signed treaties. They chose understanding over annihilation." Ash's silver eyes seemed to glow in the chamber's light. "I propose a new covenant. Not a treaty or alliance, but a philosophy. Advanced species should not exploit younger ones. They should protect them, guide them, help them reach their potential. Power should be measured not by what you can destroy, but by what you choose to preserve." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives were enthusiastic, others skeptical. But the conversation had begun, and that was what mattered. After the session, the Vryn Empress Talsera approached them privately. She was younger than Taemin expected, with skin that shimmered pale blue and eyes that held both sadness and determination. "Honored Ash," she said formally, "on behalf of the Vryn Empire, I apologize for centuries of dishonor. My grandfather respected you, but he was one voice against tradition. I cannot undo the past, but I can shape the future." She bowed deeply. "Would you consider returning to our court as an advisor? A counselor? We need your wisdom." Ash was quiet for a moment. Then he said gently, "Your Majesty, I appreciate the offer, but my place is with the one who saw past appearances without needing to be told, who offered respect simply because it was right." He glanced at Taemin. "That is the truest form of honor," Talsera smiled sadly. "I understand, but know that you will always have friends among the Vryn. My grandfather's vision lives on." Taemin was offered a position too, ambassador to the Valar, a prestigious role that would have set him up for life. He turned it down. "I've spent my whole life fighting," he told the diplomatic official. "I want to build instead." Jiwoo had the same reaction when she was offered a promotion. "I'm done with intelligence work. I want to do something that actually helps people understand each other." They pooled their resources and opened a cultural exchange center on Haven 7 Station, a place where different species could come to learn about each other. Not as enemies or allies, but as neighbors. The center grew quickly. Vryn humans and Valar worked side by side. Students came from across the galaxy to attend programs. What started as a small facility became a hub for interstellar cooperation. 6 months after the conspiracy was stopped, Taemin stood on a balcony overlooking Haven 7's cityscape. The station had changed. More species mixed freely. More cooperation. More understanding. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Ash joined him, moving silently on the balcony. "Thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was alone in an empty apartment, trying to figure out civilian life. Now look at this." Taemin gestured at the center below. "We built something good. You built it. I just helped. You revealed your entire species to save mine. I think that counts as more than helping." Jiwoo emerged from inside carrying 3 drinks. She'd learned to make a beverage that all 3 of them could enjoy. She called it diplomatic coffee because it was acceptable to everyone but perfect for no one. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the station's traffic flow past. Ships of every design and origin, all coexisting in the same space. "I've been thinking," Taemin said eventually, "about what the Emperor said, about blood debts and honor, and," Ash prompted, "I saved his life without knowing who he was, just because it was the right thing to do. And he left me you, not as a burden but as a gift." Taemin looked at the wolf. "He knew you'd reveal yourself, knew you'd save my people. He planned it all. He was a wise leader," Ash agreed, "but why me? Why not someone more important? A diplomat or a leader?" Ash's silver eyes reflected the station lights. "Because you treated me with respect from the beginning. When everyone else saw a monster, you saw a being who deserved dignity. The Emperor knew the quality was rare." Jiwoo raised her cup. "To the Emperor, then, and to strange inheritances." They touched cups in a gesture that crossed species lines. "Can I ask you something?" Taman said to Ash. The Emperor told you about the conspiracy. Knew he was being poisoned. Why did he give you to me instead of just telling his own people? Because his own people wouldn't have believed him. The Ascendancy's influence was too deep. He needed someone outside the system. Someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Ash made that sound that was almost a laugh. He chose well. What will you do now? Jiwoo asked the wolf. Your people are reuniting. Don't you want to be with them? Eventually, perhaps. But right now my place is here, helping build something better than what came before. Ash looked at both of them. Besides, I've grown fond of you two. 10,000 years is a long time to be alone. I'm in no hurry to be alone again. Taman felt warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with his healing wounds. He'd started this journey alone, broken, unsure of his place in a peaceful galaxy. Now he had a purpose. Friends. A family. Even if it was the strangest family in the universe. The Galactic Council approved your covenant proposal, Jiwoo said, checking her datapad. It's not binding yet, but 12 species have signed on, including the Vryn and humanity. It's a start, Ash said. Change takes time, but the conversation has begun. They sat in comfortable silence watching the galaxy move around them, a human war veteran who found his purpose, an intelligence analyst who discovered ideals worth fighting for, and an ancient being who finally found a reason to stop hiding. The stars shone bright above Haven 7 Station. Somewhere out there, the Valar were rebuilding their civilization. The Vryn were healing from their civil conflict. Humanity was learning to be more than conquerors or victims. And in one small cultural center on a crowded station, 3 unlikely friends were proving that understanding was possible. That different species could not just coexist but thrive together. Hey Ash, Taman said suddenly.